What if the future arrived overnight, and you weren't ready for it? That question echoed in Emily Carter's mind long before anyone sounded the alarm. But on this gray Monday morning, it became prophecy. The Pentagon was never quiet, not truly. But today, there was an uneasy stillness. The air hummed with a strange static, like the world was holding its breath before a storm. In the Cyber Defense Command Wing, Emily's fingers hovered over her keyboard, her eyes red from another sleepless night. Her coffee had long gone cold. Her heart was just tired. Ever since Daniel died, every morning felt like this. Ever since the world she knew shattered in an instant. Since she realized that sometimes the true enemy is fate itself. She blinked hard, pushing the grief aside like she always did. Duty first, emotion later. It was the only way to keep moving forward. Suddenly, a notification flashed on her screen, its crimson letters cutting through the morning haze. Confidential, executive security alert, code stratum. A chill shot through her spine, colder than any winter morning. She had never seen stratum triggered. It was the stuff of legends, a protocol whispered about in secure server rooms. Rumored to be reserved for only two scenarios: verified alien contact or a global existential threat. Before she could even process the implications, the intercom boomed to life, the voice sharp and authoritative. Attention! Pentagon lockdown is now in effect. All personnel are to remain at their stations unless given secure movement clearance. This is not a drill. The hum in the air intensified, and the low chatter of the command center died instantly. Every head turned, eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and fear. Lockdown? That was for imminent physical threats. But code stratum? That was something else entirely. Something bigger. Emily's training kicked in. She pulled up the stratum protocol files, her hands flying across the keyboard. The files were heavily encrypted, layers upon layers of digital locks. But she was one of the best. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was connected. Connected to Daniel. Connected to the strange energy readings he was tracking before his accident. It's not just an alert, a voice whispered from the next station. It was Jenkins, a junior analyst whose face had gone pale. Look at the global feeds. Emily toggled to the public networks. News channels were in chaos. Every major city on Earth was reporting the same phenomenon. Massive, silent, geometric objects had appeared in the skies. They weren't moving, they weren't communicating, they were just there. Hovering over London, Tokyo, New York, Moscow. Silent sentinels that had arrived without a sound. The world was holding its breath, and Emily felt like she was at the very center of the storm. The executive alert wasn't about a threat from another country. It was about a threat from another world. "Carter!" Her commander's voice cut through the noise. "Get me a line to NORAD. I want every satellite we have pointed at those things. And find out why our early warning systems were blind." Emily's mind raced. Blind? How could every single one of their multi-trillion-dollar defense systems miss something of this magnitude? It was impossible. Unless they weren't meant to see it, or unless someone had made them blind. As she rerouted satellite telemetry, a hidden partition on her drive began to glow, a digital ghost Daniel had left for her. A breadcrumb trail he'd created just in case. His last message to her had been cryptic. "They're not listening from the outside, Em. They're already inside." At the time, she thought he was talking about a mole, a human traitor. Now a more terrifying possibility began to form. She opened Daniel's hidden file. It wasn't code. It was a star chart, but one unlike any she'd ever seen. It mapped energy signatures, not stars. And at the center of it all was a single, pulsing frequency, a frequency that was now being broadcast globally from the mysterious objects. It wasn't an attack. It was a signal, a key. A new message popped onto her screen. This one not from the Pentagon's secure network. It was from an anonymous source, using an encryption she recognized instantly. Daniel's encryption. The message was one sentence. "Stratum isn't a defense, it's a welcome party. They didn't find us, we invited them." The floor seemed to drop out from under her. The lockdown, the alert, the silence from the government, It was all a script, a pre-planned response. This wasn't an invasion. It was an arrival, and someone high up in the chain of command had rolled out the red carpet. Her grief for Daniel suddenly morphed into a cold, hard resolve. He hadn't died in a random accident. He had been silenced. He knew this was coming, and he had left her the tools to uncover the truth. The intercom crackled again. Secure teams, move to level Gamma. Detain Cyber Command Analyst Emily Carter. She is now considered a security risk. Repeat, detain Emily Carter. They knew she was close. They knew she had Daniel's key. Emily looked at the screen, then at the armed guards already moving down the corridor. She had two choices: surrender and let the truth be buried with her, or run and fight. For Daniel, there was no choice. Duty first, emotion later. But now, her duty wasn't to the uniform or the flag. It was to the truth. She grabbed a portable data drive, initiated a server wipe to cover her tracks, and slipped into a maintenance corridor just as her office door burst open. The Pentagon was a labyrinth, but she knew its secrets. She was no longer just a cyber analyst. She was a fugitive. The silent objects outside were a mystery to the world, but Emily was beginning to understand. The real threat wasn't in the sky. It was right here, in the heart of the world's most secure building, and she was the only one who could expose it. Her personal grief had just intersected with the fate of the entire planet. The future had arrived, and ready or not, she was about to meet it head-on. What do you think she'll discover? This is just the beginning of the story, a glimpse into a world on the brink of a monumental change. If you want to find out what happens next to Emily Carter and what secrets Code Stratum is hiding, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. We're going to be diving deep into this new world, and you won't want to miss a single second. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. The floor beneath me started to shake, a low, guttural rumble that you feel in your bones before you hear it. Then the sound hit, a series of heavy metallic thuds as blast doors sealed shut, one after another, locking us in. The sterile white lights of the hallway were immediately replaced by the pulsing, ominous glow of red security strobes. It was like the building itself was having a heart attack. The low hum of conversations around me fractured, breaking into 1,000 anxious whispers. People were looking around, eyes wide, searching for answers in each other's faces but finding only shared confusion and a growing sense of dread. My phone vibrated against my hip, a single sharp buzz that cut through the noise. I pulled it out. The screen was stark, just black text on a white background. Priority summons, East Secure Briefing Room, now. My blood ran cold. My heart, which had been a steady drum, suddenly started pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. The East Secure Briefing Room. That wasn't for budget meetings or policy updates. That room was a myth to most, a legend whispered about in the halls of power. It was reserved for the kind of events that change the world, the kind that rewrite history books, nuclear crises, imminent war, the things you pray you'll only ever read about. Without a second thought, I snatched my security badge from my desk. I didn't even have time to process what was happening before two armed guards materialized at my side. Their faces were grim, set like stone, their movements efficient and devoid of any wasted motion. They didn't say a word, just flanked me and started moving. My footsteps echoed, sharp and strangely lonely against the polished floors. It felt like I was the only person left in the entire facility. The usually bustling hallways were now eerily empty, cleared in a matter of seconds. The only other people I saw were soldiers positioned at key intersections, their bodies tense, rifles held at a low ready. They weren't just on alert. They were braced for impact. As we approached the briefing room, a single reinforced door at the end of a long, silent corridor, my escort came to a sudden halt. The guard on my left turned his head just enough to look at me, his voice low and flat. "Step inside. Do not speak unless you are asked to." The command was absolute. I swallowed hard, the knot of fear in my stomach tightening. This was it. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and pushed the heavy door open. I stepped inside. The air in the room was thick with tension, so heavy you could practically taste it. Seated around a massive mahogany table were the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the heads of every major intelligence command, and one civilian. My eyes locked on him. Elon Musk. He was sitting there looking strangely, almost unnervously calm. His hands were folded neatly on the table in front of him, and his eyes, they were bright with a kind of fierce intensity you only see in people who genuinely believe they've outrun destiny. Or maybe, people who think they've reinvented it. While everyone else in the room looked like they were carrying the weight of the world, he looked like he was about to give a product demonstration. General Hawkins, his face a mask of stern authority, was the first to break the suffocating silence. His voice was a low growl, each word laced with skepticism. "Ms. Vance, thank you for joining us." He gestured vaguely towards the civilian at the table. "Mr. Musk here claims to be in possession of technology that may alter the global security balance." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "This meeting is to verify those claims, and, if necessary, to determine containment protocols." Containment. The word hung in the air, cold and sharp. Before I could even fully process it, Musk stood up. He wasn't tall, but he had a presence that immediately commanded the room's attention. He looked around the table, meeting the eyes of every general and director. "Not alter," he said. His voice wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet, matter-of-fact, filled with an unnerving urgency. It was the voice of a surgeon delivering a difficult but undeniable diagnosis. "Save." He paused for a beat, letting that single word land. "Humanity is running out of time." And just like that, I felt something stir deep inside me. It was a chaotic mix of curiosity, a profound sense of fear, but also, unexpectedly, a flicker of hope. What did he know that we didn't? And what in God's name was he about to show us? Musk walked over to a shielded terminal at the head of the room, his movements fluid and confident. He didn't ask for permission. He just acted as if he owned the place. He keyed in a complex code, and a holographic display shimmered to life in the center of the table. It showed a swirling, three-dimensional map of the globe. But this wasn't a weather map or a display of troop movements. It was covered in a web of faint golden lines, pulsing with a soft light, connecting major cities, research hubs, and remote undisclosed locations across every continent. "For the past decade," Musk began, his eyes fixed on the hologram, "my private ventures have been mapping something, not the Earth's surface or its oceans. We've been mapping its temporal gravitational field." A murmur went through the room. A few of the scientists in the corner began whispering furiously. General Hawkins just scowled, his skepticism hardening. "Temporal what? Mr. Musk, we are not here for a science fiction lecture. We are here to discuss a tangible threat." Musk smiled, a thin, knowing smile. "General, what if I told you that time isn't a straight line? It's more like a river with currents, eddies, and occasional waterfalls." He manipulated the hologram, and a single point on the map began to glow an angry red right over the central United States. "Our models predict a catastrophic temporal event. A waterfall, if you will. A complete breakdown of linear causality in this region. In exactly 72 hours, time itself will begin to unravel. It will not be an explosion. It will be a silent, invisible erasure, and it will spread." The room was dead silent now. The idea was so preposterous, so far beyond the scope of our understanding of physics, that it was impossible to believe. And yet, the look on Musk's face, the sheer conviction in his voice was chilling. He wasn't proposing a theory. He was stating a fact. He then brought up a second image, a sleek, impossibly futuristic device. It looked like a fusion of a satellite and something out of an alien movie, all crystalline structures and glowing energy conduits. "This," he said, his voice dropping to an almost reverent whisper, "is Kronos. It is not a weapon. It is an anchor. It has the ability to stabilize a localized temporal field, to reinforce the fabric of space-time and prevent it from tearing. My mind was racing. If he was lying, it was the most elaborate, insane hoax in human history. But if he was telling the truth, the implications were staggering. "You've built a time machine?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I broke the general's rule, but nobody seemed to notice. Musk turned his gaze to me. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than pure confidence in his eyes. Maybe it was weariness. "No," he said softly. "I've built a dam for the river of time, but to deploy it, to activate it in time, I need resources no private citizen can access. I need global satellite uplinks, secure launch facilities, and absolute operational authority. I need your help. The world needs your help." He looked back at the grim-faced generals. "The clock is ticking, and we have less than 3 days before it stops. For everyone." The red light on the map pulsed, a silent, steady heartbeat counting down to the end of everything we knew. And in that moment, we all had to decide. Was this man a charlatan, or was he our last and only hope? Thank you so much for watching. What do you think they should do? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next part of this thrilling saga. See you in the next one. Elon Musk just revealed something that could change everything we know about life, death, and the universe. Forget rockets, forget AI. This is something else entirely. Musk placed a small, polished black case on the table. It was made of metal, seamless, and hummed with a faint, almost living energy. "What I'm about to show you," he announced to a room full of generals and intelligence experts, "is not a weapon. It is a doorway." A few of the older generals scoffed, but I felt goosebumps prickle my arms. A doorway to what? My mind raced with possibilities. Mars? Another dimension? Time itself? Then, the unthinkable happened. Musk's gaze swept across the room past the decorated military leaders and landed directly on me. Me, Emily Vance, cybersecurity intelligence. A glorified code monkey in a room of giants. "Someone here," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "has experienced profound loss. Someone who knows pain and purpose. Humanity will need that perspective." My breath hitched in my throat. How could he possibly know? Was this some elaborate psychological game? My boss, General Hawkins, frowned. "With all due respect, Mr. Musk, she is cybersecurity intelligence, not relevant to—" But Musk raised a hand, silencing him instantly. "She is exactly relevant," he insisted. "This device deals not with power, but with the human soul." The human soul. The words echoed in the silent room. My stomach twisted into a knot. The air buzzed with whispers, and my mind, against my will, flashed with memories I kept locked away. Daniel, my husband, laughing in our sunlit kitchen, the wind whipping through his hair on our last road trip down the coast. And then the other memories, the shrill ring of the phone, the sterile white of the hospital, the goodbye I never got to say. I blinked hard, pushing back the tears. Not here. Not now. With a soft click, Musk opened the case. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. It wasn't just a drop in temperature or a shift in pressure. It felt like reality itself was bending, leaning in to get a closer look. Nestled inside on a bed of black velvet was a silver oval-shaped device, no bigger than a coffee mug. It glowed with a soft, almost imperceptible light, yet it radiated a powerful presence. It felt aware. It felt like it knew me. Murmurs rippled through the room. The security staff, men trained for any threat, shifted nervously on their feet, their hands inching towards their sidearms. My own heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden quiet. This was not technology as I knew it. This wasn't circuits and code. This felt ancient, alive, and it was looking right at me. "This," Musk said, his voice now a reverent whisper, is the echo chamber. It doesn't send radio waves. It doesn't transmit data. It connects to the residual energy left behind by a consciousness, the echoes of a soul. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. It allows us to speak with those who are gone. The room erupted. Shouts of impossible and blasphemy rang out. General Hawkins was on his feet, his face red with fury. This is a mockery of everything we stand for, of our fallen comrades. But Musk remained calm, his eyes still fixed on me. Is it, General? Or is it the greatest comfort we could ever offer a grieving world? A chance to say a proper goodbye? A chance to ask the questions that haunt us? My world tilted on its axis. Speak with Daniel? The thought was a simultaneous burst of overwhelming hope and terrifying fear. To hear his voice again? To tell him I love him one more time? The longing was a physical ache in my chest. But what if it wasn't him? What if it was just a sophisticated program, a cruel imitation designed to prey on the broken-hearted? Miss Vance, Musk said, his voice gentle now. The device requires a strong emotional anchor, a recent, profound loss, your grief. It's a beacon in the static. It's the key. He gestured towards the glowing oval. This is not a demonstration for them, it's an invitation for you to be the first. All eyes were on me. The generals, the security team, the most powerful man in the room. They all saw the intelligence analyst, but Musk somehow saw the grieving widow. He saw the pain I hid behind firewalls and encryption. My training screamed at me to refuse, to analyze the threat, to report the security risk. This device could be the most dangerous psychological weapon ever created. But the part of me that was just Emily, the part of me that still woke up reaching for the empty side of the bed, was screaming something else. My hand trembled as I took a step forward. General Hawkins started to object, but a single look from Musk stopped him cold. The room held its breath. I reached the table, my reflection warped in the polished surface of the case. The silver device hummed, its light pulsing in time with my racing heart. It felt warm to the touch. How? I whispered, my voice hoarse. How does it work? You just think of him, Musk explained softly. Focus on your strongest memory, the love you felt. The device will do the rest. It will find his echo in the fabric of space-time. I closed my eyes. I didn't think of the hospital. I didn't think of the funeral. I thought of Daniel on our anniversary, dancing with me in the living room to our favorite song, his head thrown back in laughter. I poured every ounce of love, every ounce of longing into that single, perfect memory. I opened my eyes and placed my hand on the device. For a moment, nothing. The silence in the room was absolute. A wave of disappointment washed over me. It was a hoax, a cruel, elaborate trick. And then, a crackle, a whisper of static from the small speaker embedded in the device. It sounded like a radio tuning between stations in a distant storm. The generals leaned forward. My heart stopped. Through the static, a voice emerged, faint, distorted, but unmistakably his. M? My name. Just my name, spoken as a question. It was Daniel's voice, the sound I thought I'd never hear again. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. I couldn't speak. I could only nod, my hand gripping the device so tightly my knuckles turned white. It's so beautiful here, the voice whispered through the static, gaining a little more clarity. It's light. Don't be sad. A sob escaped my lips. A raw, wounded sound. It was real. Somehow, impossibly, it was real. Around the room, hardened military men stared in stunned, disbelieving silence. General Hawkins sank back into his chair, his face pale. This wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a trick. It was a miracle. Daniel, I finally managed to choke out. I miss you. I miss you so much. The static swelled for a moment, and then his voice returned, full of the warmth I remembered so well. I know, Em. I know. But you have to be strong. You have a purpose. This is just the beginning. The light from the device pulsed brightly one last time and then faded. The static died, and the voice was gone. Silence descended once more. But this time it was different. It was filled with awe, with wonder, and with a million new questions. Musk looked at me, a soft, knowing smile on his face. "You see?" he said quietly. "A doorway." I looked down at the device, now cool and dormant in my hand. He was gone, but he had spoken to me. And in those few words, he hadn't just given me peace. He had given me a mission. "The beginning of what?" I asked, looking up at Musk. My grief was still there, a part of me forever, but now it was intertwined with something new, a profound and electrifying purpose. Musk's smile widened. "The beginning," he said, "of humanity's next conversation. What would you do if you had this chance? To speak to someone you've lost, one last time? This is the question we now face. This technology is real, and it changes everything." Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more content that pushes the boundaries of imagination, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Musk spoke softly, his voice barely a whisper in the sterile, high-tech room. "I built this to end suffering, to show truth, to heal, not to control." His words hung in the air, filled with a weight that seemed almost too heavy for the space. But General Hawkins' voice, sharp as a razor, cut right through it. "We will determine that." The general's stance was rigid, his face a mask of military resolve. Before Musk could even form a response, a soft, unfamiliar beeping echoed from overhead. It was a sound I had never heard before in all my years working here, an ultra-secure alert. My heart began to pound against my ribs. Instantly, every screen in the room flashed with a stark red message. Authorization override request. Device intercept protocol. The Pentagon. They wanted control. Not later. Not after a debriefing, but immediately. They wanted whatever incredible, terrifying thing Musk had brought with him. My chest tightened, and the air felt thick, difficult to breathe. A soldier, young but with eyes that had seen too much, stepped forward, his movements precise and automatic. "Sir," he said, his voice firm, addressing Musk. "Per protocol, surrender the device." Musk didn't flinch. He didn't move a muscle. He stood like a statue, his gaze locked on the general. "If you take this without understanding it," he warned, his voice low and serious, "you doom us all." The tension in the room coiled, tightening like a spring. I could see fingers hovering near triggers, knuckles turning white. My own breath felt trapped in my lungs, a painful pressure building in my chest. It felt like the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for the single spark that would ignite an explosion. And then, something impossible happened. A sudden vibration buzzed in my pocket. My personal phone. I froze, my mind racing. It was impossible. All personal electronics were neutralized, completely inert, inside secure rooms like this one. It was one of the most basic security protocols. Yet, a message lit up my screen, a glowing beacon in the suffocating tension. The words were simple, but they sent a shiver down my spine. "Emily, trust your humanity." My blood ran cold. The message was from an unknown number, but that wasn't the most chilling part. The signal had to be local, extremely local. It was sent from inside this room. My eyes darted around from Musk's calm, unreadable face to the general's hardened expression, to the nervous soldiers. Who sent it? And how? Was it Musk himself with some hidden technology? Or was it something else? Something connected to the device itself? The soldiers began to advance, their boots making soft, menacing sounds on the polished floor. The general gave a curt nod, a silent command to proceed. They were going to take it by force. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and fear. Trust your humanity. What did that even mean? Was I supposed to intervene? To stop them? Me, an analyst, against a squad of trained soldiers and a 3-star general. It was suicide. But Musk's words echoed in my head. You doom us all. He wasn't talking to the general anymore. It felt like he was talking directly to me, as if he knew I'd received the message. My humanity. In a room built on protocol, procedure, and cold logic, that message felt like a foreign language. Yet it was the only thing that made any sense. I took a half step forward, my own hand trembling. General, wait, I heard myself say, my voice a dry croak. Every head snapped towards me. The soldiers paused, surprised. General Hawkins turned, his eyes narrowing into slits. Analyst Reed, you are out of line. His voice was a low growl, a clear warning. But I couldn't stop. The message on my phone felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. Sir, what if he's right? What if we don't understand what we're doing? The general's glare was withering. Your job is to analyze data, Reed, not to question direct orders from the Pentagon. He turned his attention back to Musk. Take it, he commanded the soldiers. As they moved, I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled out my phone and held it up, the glowing message facing the general. This was sent to me just now, I said, my voice shaking but growing louder. Inside this room, how is that possible, General? The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. It was filled with confusion. The soldiers hesitated, looking from me to the general. Even Hawkins seemed momentarily thrown. He stared at my phone, then at Musk. Musk's expression remained unchanged, but I thought I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Acknowledgement? A soldier looked at his own secure comms device. Sir, she's right. There are no active non-military signals in this room. Her phone should be a brick. The general's face was a storm of conflicting emotions. The impossible event happening right in front of him clashed with a lifetime of military certainty. The protocol was absolute, but the reality was undeniable. He looked at the device in Musk's possession, a sleek obsidian object that seemed to absorb the light around it. He looked at Musk, then at me, the low-level analyst who had just thrown a wrench into the most critical operation of his career. What is this, Musk? Hawkins demanded, his voice losing some of its sharp edge. What game are you playing? Musk finally smiled, a small, sad smile. It's not a game, he replied. It's a choice, and it's not your choice to make, or mine. His gaze shifted, and for the first time, it landed squarely on me. It's hers. Every eye in the room turned to me. The soldiers, the general, even Musk. I felt like I was standing on a precipice, the weight of the world suddenly resting on my shoulders. The device in the center of the room seemed to pulse with a faint, silent energy. Trust your humanity. The message wasn't just a suggestion. It was an instruction, a test. What happens next? This is just the beginning of a story that will make you question everything. If you want to find out what choice I make, and what this mysterious device truly is, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on. We dive deep into stories that explore the boundaries of technology, humanity, and the choices that define us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next part. Have you ever felt like you were standing on the edge of a massive change? A moment so big it could redefine your entire life? That's exactly where Emily Carter found herself. Imagine this. A quiet, unassuming woman, someone you might pass on the street without a second glance, is suddenly standing in a room that hums with power and secrets. A room that feels like the very center of the world. She looked across the polished table, her eyes locking with a man whose name is synonymous with the future itself. Musk. He gave a nod, so small it was almost invisible. But for Emily, it was like a cosmic switch had been flipped. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. In that single, silent gesture, she understood. Every loss, every struggle, every step she had taken in her life had led her to this exact moment. This was the day she had been unknowingly walking toward since she lost everything. A day when choosing heart over fear wasn't just a personal choice, but one that could literally change the future of humanity. Her own voice was a stranger to her, a faint, trembling whisper that barely disturbed the heavy air. "What am I being pulled into?" she asked the silence. It was a question aimed at the universe, at the man across the table, at her own reflection in the gleaming surface. The weight of the moment was immense, the kind of pressure that can either crush you or forge you into something stronger. This isn't just a story about technology or power. It's about the human spirit and its incredible capacity for resilience. Emily had faced a past that would have broken most people. She'd lost her family in a tragic accident, a freak event that science couldn't explain. Her career as a brilliant astrophysicist crumbled as she became obsessed with the anomaly that had shattered her world. She was dismissed as a crank, a woman chasing ghosts in the data. She lost her home, her reputation, everything. All she had left was a single radical theory, an idea so outlandish that it made her an outcast in the scientific community. But one person listened. One person saw the pattern she saw, the terrifying, beautiful truth hidden in the numbers. And that person was now sitting across from her, offering her a chance not just for redemption, but to prevent the same tragedy from happening on a global scale. This meeting wasn't in some fancy corporate high-rise. It was in a place where decisions ripple across the globe. A place where history is made and unmade in windowless rooms. The Pentagon. The very air felt suspended, holding its breath, waiting to see which way history would tilt. Emily's theory was simple yet revolutionary. She believed that what had destroyed her family wasn't an accident. It was a message, a warning. She had discovered faint, rhythmic energy pulses emanating from the darkest corners of space, pulses that correlated with catastrophic, natural disasters on Earth. She believed an intelligence was out there, and its methods were destructive, not out of malice, she argued, but as a form of communication we couldn't comprehend. Like a child trying to get a bug's attention by poking it with a stick, unaware the poke could be fatal. The scientific establishment had laughed her out of every conference hall. But Musk, a man who built his empire on laughing in the face of the impossible, had found her research. He saw what the others refused to see, a pattern, a threat, and more importantly, an opportunity. He had secretly assembled a team, a clandestine brain trust of the world's most forward-thinking minds, operating under the Pentagon's uneasy protection. And Emily Carter was the key. She was the only one who didn't just understand the what, but was beginning to understand the why. So there she was, a woman who had been talking to herself for years, now the center of attention in a room full of generals, physicists, and one visionary billionaire. The choice before her was terrifying. To embrace her wild theory and step onto the world stage meant risking ridicule on a scale she couldn't imagine. It meant becoming the face of a reality humanity wasn't ready for, but to retreat, to let fear win, meant gambling with the fate of the entire planet. It meant letting her family's sacrifice be for nothing. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This was the ultimate test. Heart over fear. Hope over despair. Her journey from the bottom, from the absolute depths of grief and isolation, had prepared her for this. Every lonely night spent staring at star charts, every condescending dismissal from her peers, had forged an inner strength she never knew she possessed. It was the strength of someone with nothing left to lose and therefore everything to fight for. Musk broke the silence, his voice calm and steady, a counterpoint to the storm inside her. "Dr. Carter," he said, "we believe you. The world needs to believe you. But first you need to believe in yourself, right here, right now. The next pulse is coming sooner than we thought. We have one chance to answer back, one chance to turn a warning into a conversation. Are you ready to lead that conversation?" The future had arrived. It wasn't in a flying car or a robot butler. It was in the quiet resolve of a woman who had been to hell and back. It was in a choice. Emily Carter stood at the doorway between the world as we know it and a future we can barely begin to imagine. She took a deep breath, the sterile, recycled air of the secure room filling her lungs. The tremor in her hands stilled. The fear didn't vanish, but something else rose to meet it. Purpose. She met Musk's gaze again, but this time, there was no hesitation in her own. Her voice, when it came, was clear and strong, echoing with the weight of her journey and the hope of a new beginning. What do we do first? And just like that, history tilted. This story, Emily's story, is just beginning. It's a reminder that sometimes our greatest challenges are just doorways to our true potential. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story sparked something in you, hit that subscribe button, because you won't want to miss what happens next. The future is a conversation, and we're all a part of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Start with a shot of Emily, face illuminated by a soft, pulsating glow from an unseen object. Her expression is a mix of awe and trepidation. Emily stared at the glowing device. The hum of it seemed to pulse right through her ribs, almost like it recognized her heartbeat. Or maybe remembered it. The silence in the room was so thick you could feel it pressing in, until General Hawkins' voice shattered the tension. "Mr. Musk, you will hand over that device now." His tone wasn't just angry. It was something much worse. It was afraid. And there's nothing more dangerous than a military man facing the unknown. But Musk, he didn't even flinch. He just tapped the device gently, almost lovingly, like someone calming a sleeping child. "General," he said, his voice steady, "if you seize this without understanding what you hold, you risk turning salvation into a weapon of conflict." One of the security officers, a young guy with a nervous twitch, took a step forward, his hand hovering over his holster. I could feel Emily's pulse spike in my own chest. It was that moment, that knife's edge, where everything could go wrong. Then Musk looked at her. Again. How did he do that? How did he manage to see past the crisp uniform, the perfect posture, the years of training? How did he see straight into the deep, quiet ache she carried inside her? It was unnerving. It was like he was reading the last page of her diary. Emily took a deep breath, forcing her voice to remain steady. Protocol, duty, control, that's what they drilled into you. "General, with respect, what is this device? We need clarity to make the right call." Hawkins didn't even bother to look at her. His eyes were locked on the object, his jaw set like stone. "We don't need clarity, Analyst Carter, we need control." And just as he said it, the device emitted a soft tone. It was a beautiful, haunting sound, like a single chime ringing out from deep underwater. A holographic ripple, faint and delicate as a spider's web, shimmered across the surface of the table. Everyone in the room stiffened. The air crackled with a new kind of energy. Emily's mind raced. This wasn't just some new piece of tech. This was different. This felt alive. The general saw a threat. Musk saw a promise. But Emily felt a connection, a pull, a memory that wasn't hers, yet felt as familiar as her own name. Musk's gaze softened as he looked back at the device. "It's not a weapon, General. It's a key. It's a bridge." He looked up, his eyes sweeping across the tense faces in the room. "A bridge to what we've lost, a bridge to what we could be." Hawkins scoffed, a harsh, grating sound. "Spare me the poetry, Musk. I see a piece of alien hardware of unknown capability in a secure facility. My job is to neutralize threats." "And my job," Musk countered, his voice rising with passion, "is to prevent you from making the biggest mistake in human history. This device doesn't just show us memories, General, it rebuilds them. It can restore what's broken. Not just in our minds, but in the world." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Restore what's broken? She thought of the faded photograph she kept locked in her desk drawer. A smiling face she could barely remember without the picture. A warmth she hadn't felt in years. Could this machine, could it really do that? The holographic ripple expanded, and this time images flickered within it. Not clear pictures, but fragments. The sun setting over a wine-dark sea. The laugh of a child chasing fireflies. The feeling of a hand held tightly in your own. They weren't just images. They were feelings, projected into the room. A wave of profound nostalgia and bittersweet joy washed over everyone. The security officer lowered his hand from his weapon, his face slack with wonder. "You see?" Musk whispered. "It's not a weapon. It's a reminder of everything we're fighting to protect. Hawkins, however, seemed immune. Or maybe he was just better at hiding it. He took a deliberate step toward the table. This is emotional manipulation. A Trojan horse. We can't know its true purpose. Emily knew she had to make a choice. Follow orders or follow the strange, undeniable instinct that told her Musk was right. Protocol was her shield, her identity. But for the first time, it felt like a cage. "General," she said, her voice stronger now, more certain. "Maybe understanding it is how we control it. What if we about to lock away a miracle because we too afraid to look at it?" Hawkins finally turned to her, his eyes cold and hard. "Analyst Carter, you are on the verge of insubordination." Before Emily could respond, the device chimed again, louder this time. The hologram solidified. In the center of the table, a perfect, shimmering image of a young woman appeared. She was laughing, her head thrown back, sunlight catching in her hair. Hawkins froze. His face, once a mask of military iron, completely shattered. His breath hitched. He whispered a name, so quiet only Emily could hear it. A name that didn't belong in a sterile briefing room. The holographic woman turned, her laughing eyes seeming to look directly at the general. "It's okay," she seemed to say, not with words, but with the pure, unadulterated essence of her joy. Musk looked at Emily, and a silent understanding passed between them. This wasn't just about technology or military control anymore. It was about humanity. It was about the ghosts we all carry, and the chance, however slim, to make peace with them. The room was silent save for the gentle hum of the device. The general stood transfixed, a man stripped bare of his rank, his authority, his certainty. He was just a man, looking at a memory he thought was lost forever. What happens when the unbreakable man is broken? What do you do when a machine shows you its soul? The choice was no longer just Emily's or the general's. The choice now belonged to all of them, and it would change the world forever. The device wasn't a weapon or a miracle, it was a question, and the answer was just beginning to unfold. Thank you so much for joining me on this narrative journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to find out what happens next, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next chapter. I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Musk leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper, yet it filled the sterile briefing room with a strange reverence. "This technology," he began, gesturing to the sleek obsidian device humming softly on the central table, "captures neural resonance. Think of them as memory signatures. It can translate pure, raw, emotional memory into a visible, tangible form." A gruff colonel, his chest puffed with medals and skepticism, let out a short, sharp scoff. "You're talking science fiction, Musk. Memory signatures, visible emotions, this is straight out of a Hollywood script." Musk simply shook his head, a patient, almost weary expression on his face. "No, Colonel. I'm talking about neuroscience, accelerated by quantum systems. It's the next logical step. With the correct neural imprint from a subject, you can literally see what someone felt, not just what they saw, but the joy, the fear, the love associated with that moment." Across the table, Emily's breath hitched, her mind reeled. Memories as images, not just fleeting recollections, but living grief, living love. The thought was both terrifying and profoundly beautiful. Before she could clamp down on the impulse, a whisper escaped her lips, cutting through the tense silence. "Why? Why would you build something like that?" For the first time, Musk's intense gaze softened. He looked directly at Emily, and it felt as if he were seeing right through her. "To heal," he said, his voice laced with an unexpected sincerity. "To heal what technology has broken. We've created a world where humanity knows data. We have zettabytes of information at our fingertips, but we've forgotten how to feel. We've forgotten empathy. This device, it's a bridge back to ourselves, back to each other." The room was utterly still. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe, caught in the weight of his words. The hum of the machine was the only sound, a low thrum of potential and peril. Suddenly, the spell was shattered. General Hawkins slammed a heavy palm flat on the polished mahogany table. The sharp crack echoed like a gunshot. "Enough of this poetic philosophy," he boomed, his face a mask of impatience. His eyes, hard as steel, darted to the armed guards flanking the doorway. "Soldiers, seize it." 2 guards, their faces impassive, stepped forward, their boots making heavy rhythmic sounds on the floor. Their movements were precise, mechanical, a stark contrast to the profound human emotion Musk had just described. They were reaching for the device, for the key to humanity's heart, with hands trained only for control. "Wait!" Emily cried out, her voice stronger than she expected. She rose from her chair, her own hands trembling slightly. "You can't just take it. You don't understand what it is, what it could do." General Hawkins turned his cold gaze on her. "I understand power when I see it, young lady. And this is a power we cannot afford to leave in private hands. Imagine the intelligence applications. We could verify loyalty, extract information without a single word being spoken. This isn't about healing, it's about security, national security." Musk stood his ground, placing a protective hand near the device. "And that's precisely the corruption I'm talking about, General. You see a weapon, I see a cure. Using this to interrogate, to control, it would defile the very essence of memory. It would turn the most sacred parts of a person into a tool for the state." The lead guard hesitated, his hand hovering just inches from the machine. He glanced from Hawkins's rigid command to Musk's defiant stance. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. What would his own memories look like on that screen? The memory of his daughter's first laugh? The sorrow of his last goodbye to a fallen comrade? The colonel, recovering from his initial skepticism, now saw the strategic advantage. "Don't listen to him," he urged the general. "This is a tactical goldmine. Think of our enemies. We could see their plans before they even form them, understand their deepest fears and exploit them. And in doing so, become the very monsters you claim to fight." Emily shot back, her fear being rapidly replaced by a fiery resolve. "You'd be violating the last private sanctuary a human being has, their own mind, their own heart." She turned to the guards, appealing to them directly. "Is that the order you want to follow? To steal a person's soul?" General Hawkins's patience had run out. His face was thunderous. "I gave you a direct order, soldier. Seize the asset now." Just as the guard's fingers were about to make contact, the device on the table pulsed with a soft, ethereal light. A low, melodic chime filled the room, overriding the hum. On the large monitor behind Musk, which had been dark until now, an image began to coalesce from a swirling mist of light and color. It was blurry at first, a kaleidoscope of abstract shapes and hues. Everyone froze, their attention captivated by the screen. The image slowly sharpened, resolving into a scene. It was a simple memory, but profoundly intimate. A small child, no older than 5, was sitting on the shoulders of a young man. They were in a park, sunlight dappling through the leaves of a large oak tree. The child was laughing, a pure, unadulterated sound of joy, while the man looked up at her with an expression of absolute, unconditional love. The emotion washed over the room, not just as a picture, but as a palpable feeling. It was warm. It was safe. It was everything good and right in the world. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Musk watched the screen with a sad smile. Even the colonel looked momentarily stunned, his tactical mind silenced by the raw beauty of the moment. The lead guard, the one whose hand was still outstretched, slowly lowered his arm. His breath was shaky. His gaze was fixed on the screen, his expression unreadable, but deeply moved. General Hawkins, however, was unmoved. Or perhaps he was more threatened than ever. "What is this trickery? Whose memory is that? Shut it down." Musk turned from the screen. "It's not trickery, General. It's truth. It's the memory of one of your own men, a testament to what is truly worth fighting for." He didn't need to say whose memory it was. The look on the face of the second guard, who now stood stock still with tears silently tracing paths down his stoic face, said it all. It was his memory, his daughter, his love. The first guard took a half step back from the table, shaking his head slightly. He looked at his partner, then at the general, a silent conflict raging in his eyes. The order was to seize the asset. But the asset had just shown him the very reason he put on the uniform each day, to protect that joy, to defend that love. "I will not be a party to this," the guard said, his voice quiet but firm. He took a full step back and stood at ease, his gaze defiant. His partner, wiping his eyes with the back of his sleeve, followed suit. He squared his shoulders and stood beside his comrade, a united front of disobedience. "Neither will I, sir." General Hawkins was apoplectic. His face turned a dangerous shade of purple. "This is insubordination, treason. I'll have you both court-martialed." Musk stepped between the general and the now defunct guards. "You see, General, it doesn't force, it doesn't coerce, it reminds. It reminds us of our shared humanity. And sometimes that reminder is more powerful than any order you can give." He looked at Emily, a silent understanding passing between them. This technology was dangerous, yes. But the world without it, the world Hawkins represented, a world of data without feeling, of power without empathy, was far more dangerous. The standoff was absolute, the general bereft of his enforcers, the soldiers standing for a principle higher than their rank. And in the middle, a device that held the power not to break humanity, but perhaps to piece it back together. The battle for the future wasn't going to be fought with guns and armies, but with memory and emotion. And in this small room, the first shot had just been fired. Thank you so much for watching this short story unfold. If you enjoyed this glimpse into a possible future, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the intersection of technology and the human spirit. Let me know in the comments what you would do with a device like this. Until next time, stay curious. Before they even touched the device, the air began to vibrate. It wasn't just a simple tremor. It was a deep, harmonic hum, almost musical in its complexity. The lights in the lab flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows across the concrete walls. I could see Emily's hands shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer energy radiating from the object at the center of the room. She was holding her breath, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The device itself began to glow, but this wasn't an ordinary light. It didn't project outward, illuminating the space around it. Instead, the light seemed to turn inward, focusing solely on Musk. A halo of shimmering energy enveloped him, a soft, ethereal corona that seemed to respond to his very presence. His expression tightened, his jaw clenched, but it wasn't a grimace of pain. It was the look of intense concentration, like a concert pianist about to play the most complex piece of their life. "It's recognizing a threat," Musk murmured, his voice low, but carrying clearly in the suddenly silent room. "And it's aligning." The guards, who had been standing at a stiff professional attention, involuntarily took a step back. Their military training was no match for this primal, inexplicable display of power. General Hawkins let out a sharp curse, his hand instinctively moving towards the sidearm holstered at his hip. He saw a weapon, a threat to be contained. But Emily's instincts screamed a different story. This wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something else entirely. It was powerful, yes, terrifyingly so. But its power felt different. It was too vast, too intricate for anyone who only saw the world through the narrow lens of control and domination. She knew in that moment that forcing the issue would be a catastrophic mistake. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Emily turned to face the general. Her voice was firm, cutting through the tension. "General, let the demonstration proceed. We don't know what we're dealing with. Interfering now could trigger unknown responses, and the consequences could be unpredictable." Hawkins glared at her, his eyes cold and hard as steel. "Are you suggesting you outrank national security, Doctor?" The threat was unmistakable. He was pulling rank, trying to intimidate her back into line, but Emily didn't flinch. "No, sir," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "I think I serve it." It was a risky answer, a direct challenge to his authority. But truth has sharp edges, and she decided right then and there that she would rather bleed on them than blunt their purpose. The stakes were too high for anything less. Amidst the standoff, Musk's voice dropped to a near whisper, a quiet murmur meant only for her ears, yet it cut through the hum of the device like a beacon. You feel it, don't you? The weight of humanity. That is why it chose to awaken now. The hair on Emily's arm stood on end. Chose? The word hung in the air, echoing in her mind. Technology doesn't choose. It follows commands, executes programs, responds to input. Unless a thought, fragile and terrifying, began to crawl into her consciousness. What if this device wasn't just an invention? What if it was something more? What if it was evolution, a new step, a new form of existence born from their own hands? Before she could even begin to process the enormity of that idea, her phone buzzed silently in her pocket, the vibration muffled by the fabric of her lab coat, pulling her attention back to a more immediate reality. The message on her screen was from an unknown number, and it contained only a single cryptic image. A star chart, but not one she recognized. The constellations were all wrong, shifted, as if viewed from a completely different point in space. And at the center of the chart was a symbol, an intricate spiral that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light, even on the tiny screen. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was no random text. It was a message, another piece of this impossible puzzle. What is it? Musk asked, his eyes still closed as he communed with the device, yet somehow he knew her attention had been diverted. I don't know, Emily whispered, showing him the screen. It's a star chart, but it's not our sky. Musk's eyes snapped open. The concentration was gone, replaced by a look of dawning realization. It's not a map of where we are, he said, his voice filled with a sense of wonder that bordered on fear. It's a map of where we can go. The hum from the device intensified, the light around Musk flaring brightly before coalescing into a single, brilliant point of light hovering just above his open palm. It looked like a captured star, a miniature sun burning with silent, impossible energy. The guards raised their rifles, shouting commands that were lost in the rising crescendo of sound. General Hawkins finally drew his weapon, aiming it squarely at Musk. "Shut it down, now!" he roared. "You can't shut it down, General," Emily shouted over the din. "It's not a machine anymore. You'll be trying to shut down a thought, an idea." But Hawkins wasn't listening. His world was one of orders and threats, of control and containment. This was chaos, anarchy, and he would not allow it. He squeezed the trigger. Time seemed to slow down. Emily saw the muzzle flash, the slight recoil of the general's arm. But the bullet never reached its target. The point of light in Musk's palm pulsed once, a wave of force, invisible and silent, expanding outward. The bullet simply stopped. It hung in midair for a fraction of a second before dropping harmlessly to the floor with a metallic clink. The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the gentle musical hum of the device. The guards stared, their rifles lowered. Hawkins looked at his pistol, then at the fallen bullet, his face a mask of disbelief. Musk slowly closed his hand around the point of light, and as his fingers curled, the light and the hum faded away, leaving the room in an ordinary, profound silence. He looked at Emily, a new understanding passing between them. This wasn't just about power or technology anymore. It was about a choice for all of humanity. "The awakening has begun," Musk said softly, "and the first question has been asked. Are we ready for the answer?" Emily looked from Musk's determined face to the general's shocked one, and then at the phone still clutched in her hand. The star chart on the screen seemed to beckon to her, a promise of a future she could never have imagined just hours ago. She didn't know if they were ready. She didn't know if she was ready, but she knew one thing for certain. They were about to find out. The world as they knew it had just ended, and something new, something terrifying and wonderful, was about to be born. What happens next is anyone's guess, but it's a story you won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and if you're as intrigued as I am, Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you do not miss the next part of this incredible journey. Her throat tightened. She swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in her eyes. The message on the device was impossibly clear, impossibly cruel. You've lost someone. This device will show you why you still have purpose. Daniel. Her brother. The name was a phantom ache in her chest, a constant hollow echo in the rooms of her heart. His absence wasn't just a space beside her. It was her loneliness, her silent struggle, the heavy weight she carried every single morning. It was the reason she fought so hard to keep going, to find a sliver of meaning in a world that felt drained of its color. The sharp, angry bark of General Hawkins shattered her fragile focus. I am not asking again. Hand it over. His voice was a weapon, cold and unforgiving. The soldiers flanking him tensed, their fingers twitching near their holsters. The air in the room crackled with a dangerous energy, thick and suffocating. Every eye was on her, on the small, glowing device in her trembling hands. It was the center of their universe right now, a universe of cold steel, polished boots, and calculated threats. But as Hawkins's demand hung in the air, the device pulsed. A soft, warm light bloomed from its core, growing brighter, pushing back the sterile shadows of the military bunker. And then, something impossible happened. Emily felt a presence, not with her ears or her eyes, but from within. It was like a hand resting gently against her heart, a warmth spreading through the icy grip of her fear. It was gentle. It was familiar. A whisper, so faint she thought it was a memory, brushed against her mind. Or was it something more? Breathe. Trust what feels right. It was Daniel's voice. Not a ghost, not a memory, but a living, breathing echo inside her soul. Her knees buckled, the sudden wave of emotion and shock stealing the strength from her legs. She grabbed the edge of the heavy metal table to keep from collapsing, her knuckles white. The world swam before her eyes, a dizzying mix of past and present. Through the blur, she saw a hand, steady and calm, place itself lightly over the device, over her own shaking fingers. She looked up, her gaze locking with the intense, focused eyes of Mr. Musk. His voice was quiet, a stark contrast to the general's aggressive command, but it carried a weight that filled the entire room. Emily, he said, his tone low and serious. Will you help me protect humanity from itself? The question hung in the air, heavier than any threat. Protect humanity? Her chest felt too tight to draw a proper breath. She looked around the room, really looked this time. She saw the soldiers, their youth hidden behind masks of military discipline, their bodies coiled like springs. She saw the generals, their faces etched with lines of calculation and cold pragmatism, their eyes seeing her not as a person, but as a variable in an equation of power. The fear in the room was a tangible thing, as thick and choking as smoke. They were all afraid. Afraid of the device, afraid of what it represented, afraid of losing control. Then she looked back at Musk. In his eyes, she didn't see the same kind of fear. She saw urgency, she saw conviction, she saw hope. It was a terrifying, exhilarating kind of hope. The world saw him as a genius, a maverick, a billionaire playing with forces beyond his control. But right now, in this subterranean fortress, he was just a man asking for her help. He wasn't demanding. He was inviting. Trust what feels right. Daniel's whisper echoed again, a guiding light in the suffocating darkness of her confusion. What felt right? Handing this incredible, mysterious object over to men who saw it only as a weapon, to men who would lock it away, study it, and inevitably use it to create more division, more fear, more control. General Hawkins represented the world she knew, a world of rules, of power, of brute force, a world that had taken her brother and left her with nothing but grief. Musk, on the other hand, was offering a different path, a path into the unknown, a chance to use this gift for something bigger than herself, bigger than her pain. He spoke of protecting humanity, not controlling it. He was asking her to take a leap of faith, to trust not in him, but in the potential of what they could achieve together. He was offering her the one thing she thought she had lost forever: purpose. The device pulsed again, its light a warm, steady heartbeat under her hand. It felt like an extension of Daniel's presence, a final gift from a brother who had always believed in her. He had always told her she was stronger than she knew, that she had a light inside her that could change the world. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment he had been preparing her for all her life. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, Emily tightened her grip on the device. She felt the pressure of Musk's hand, a silent alliance. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but for the first time since Daniel's death it was joined by something else, a flicker of resolve, a spark of defiance. She met General Hawkins's steely gaze, her own eyes no longer stinging with tears, but clear and determined. The silence stretched, a battlefield of wills. Her loneliness had been her prison, but now it was becoming her strength. She had lost everything, which meant she had nothing left to lose, and everything to fight for. Thank you so much for watching. What would you do in Emily's shoes? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. See you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that questions the very fabric of our reality and what it means to be human. Imagine a device, not a weapon, but something far more powerful, a mirror to our collective soul. Our story centers on Dr. Eris Thorne, a brilliant but haunted scientist. Years ago, she created the empath, a device designed to broadcast the raw, unfiltered emotions and memories of one person to another. Her goal was noble: to create ultimate understanding, to end conflict by forcing us to literally feel what others feel. But the first test, a link between two volunteers, ended in a psychic catastrophe. The feedback loop was too intense, too pure. Both individuals were left in a catatonic state, their minds shattered by the weight of another's existence. The project was immediately classified, buried under layers of secrecy, and Eris was left with the heavy burden of her creation. Now, years later, the world is on the brink. Tensions between global powers have reached a boiling point. The rhetoric is heated, the armies are mobilized, and the doomsday clock is ticking closer to midnight than ever before. In the sterile, high-tech corridors of the Pentagon, General Marcus Thorne, Eris's estranged father and a man who believes in order and control above all else, sees only one solution: a preemptive strike. He's convinced that a show of overwhelming force is the only way to restore stability. He's a man who trusts in tangible power, in weapons you can see and fire. To him, his daughter's work is a dangerous, unpredictable variable. But someone else has been watching, someone with a different vision for humanity's future. The enigmatic tech billionaire Julian Vance has been tracking the Empath project for years. He believes that the world doesn't need another weapon, it needs a revelation. He reaches out to Eris, not in a lab or an office, but through a series of cryptic, untraceable messages. He knows about the failed test, but he also knows the empath's true potential. He proposes a radical idea: to secretly build a new, refined version of the empath, not to link two people, but to link one mind to the entire global communications network. To broadcast a single, powerful message of peace and unity directly into the consciousness of every person on Earth. Eris is torn. The memory of her failed experiment, the faces of those two broken individuals, haunts her every waking moment. She fears the power she unleashed. Yet, the thought of her father's preemptive strike of a world consumed by fire is a far greater terror. Vance's plan is insane, a gamble of unprecedented scale. But what if it's the only chance they have left? She agrees to meet him, stepping back into the world she tried so desperately to leave behind. Their meeting takes place in an abandoned subway station, a ghost of a bygone era, now repurposed into Vance's hidden laboratory. The air hums with the energy of advanced technology, a stark contrast to the decaying concrete surroundings. Vance is charismatic, his belief in the project almost hypnotic. He shows Eris his modifications, failsafes, regulators, and a sophisticated AI designed to modulate the psychic output to prevent the kind of overload that caused the first disaster. He argues that humanity is on a path of self-destruction because we've forgotten how to feel for each other. The empath, he claims, isn't a mind control device, it's a reminder. As they work, a new critical question arises. Who will be the broadcaster? Who has a mind pure enough, a will strong enough, to send a message of peace without it being corrupted by their own biases, fears, or ego? The psychic toll would be immense, potentially fatal. Eris, carrying the guilt of her past, believes the burden should be hers. Vance, the visionary who set this all in motion, sees it as his own destiny. Their debate is a quiet battle of ideals, a race against the ticking clock as General Thorne moves his pieces into place on the global chessboard. Meanwhile, within the Pentagon, intelligence analyst Maya Singh stumbles upon an anomaly. She notices faint energy signatures, ghost-like data trails that point to a massive, unauthorized power draw, all converging on a single classified project file, the empath. Her systems flag it as a glitch, but her instincts tell her otherwise. She starts digging, peeling back the layers of digital dust and classified redactions. The deeper she goes, the more she realizes this isn't just old data. Something is active, something is being built, and the energy signatures match chatter about Julian Vance's secret projects. She brings her findings to General Thorne, expecting him to be concerned. Instead, he becomes dismissive, almost angry, ordering her to drop it. This only confirms her suspicions. The general knows more than he's letting on. He isn't just aware of the empath, he's afraid of it. Back in the subway lab, the new empath is complete. It's a sleek, humming marvel of chrome and light, far more elegant than its clunky predecessor. But their time has run out. General Thorne, alerted by the very security systems he controls, has tracked them down. Commandos storm the station, their weapons raised. Thorne confronts his daughter, not as a father, but as a commander facing a threat. He sees the empath as the ultimate breach of security, a rogue element that could throw the world into chaos. "Shut it down, Eris," he commands, his voice cold and hard. "This is an act of treason." Vance steps forward, shielding Eris. "General," he says calmly, "you're about to make a mistake that will cost billions of lives. You fear this device, but what you really fear is what it represents. A world you can't control with force." In that tense standoff, Eris has a moment of profound clarity. She looks at her father, at the soldiers, at the fear and aggression in their eyes. She looks at Vance, filled with a desperate, radical hope. And she finally understands. They didn't fear the machine itself. They feared what it would reveal. The raw, messy, beautiful, and terrifying truth of the human heart. They feared having to truly face themselves. General Thorne sees her hesitation as weakness. "This is your last chance, Eris." But Eris has made her choice. She turns to Vance, her eyes resolute, and gives a single, barely perceptible nod. "Yes." A wave of relief washes over Vance's face. Hope. But before anyone can act, Maya Singh, having defied orders and followed her own trail, lunges forward. "You can't do this, you don't know what it will do to everyone." Just as she speaks, a deafening alarm shrieks through the lab. It's not the station's local alarm, it's a global security override. Every screen flashes with a new, terrifying alert. Unauthorized empathic field activation. Source: unknown. Location: Pentagon Deep Archive. A cold dread washes over everyone in the room. Someone else has an empath, and they've just turned it on. But this isn't a message of peace. A wave of pure, unfiltered terror and rage washes over the soldiers. They begin to tremble, their eyes wide with a shared primal fear. One of them screams and drops his weapon, curling into a ball. Another raises his rifle, his face a mask of paranoia, aiming at his own squad mate. Chaos erupts. The psychic broadcast isn't one of unity. It's a weapon of madness, turning soldier against soldier. Thorne stares in horror as his disciplined unit tears itself apart. This is a nightmare beyond his comprehension. Far away, in cities across the globe, the first ripples of this psychic poison begin to spread. People in crowded streets suddenly stop, gripped by an inexplicable dread, their eyes darting around for a threat that isn't there. The world is being plunged not into war, but into a collective insanity. And in the heart of the Pentagon, a hidden player has just made their opening move. What happens next? Who activated this weaponized empath, and why? Can Eris and Vance use their own device to counter this wave of psychic terror? We'll have to leave it there for today. This story is a chilling reminder that the most dangerous weapon is not the one that destroys our bodies, but the one that corrupts our minds. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this narrative, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Let me know your theories in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. A heavy blast door slams shut, the metallic clang echoing through the cavernous room, sealing us all inside. The finality of the sound is a physical blow. Gasps ripple through the crowd, quickly escalating into panicked shouts. I see hands instinctively reaching for weapons, the tension in the air so thick you could choke on it. My own heart is a frantic drum against my ribs, each beat a hammer blow of pure terror. Beside me I hear Musk's voice, a low, chilling whisper that cuts through the chaos. It's beginning. As if on cue, a second alert flashes across the massive screen in front of us, the words searing themselves into my brain. Neural memory bridge sync. Subject identified, Emily Carter. My name. It's my name. My vision whites out, a blinding, disorienting flood of light. But I don't fall. Instead, a bizarre sensation takes over. I'm floating, weightless, suspended in a silent void. My lungs have stopped working, but I'm not suffocating. The fear is still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it's distant, muffled by this strange new reality. And then, through the shimmering whiteness, I see him. Daniel. My Daniel. He's standing there, bathed in the kind of warm, golden sunlight that used to spill into our kitchen on Sunday mornings. He's smiling that familiar, lopsided grin, the one that always made me feel like everything was right with the world, back when the world still made sense. A sob, silent and raw, tears its way out of my chest, but no sound comes out. My voice is a choked whisper, barely a breath. Dan. He takes a step closer. He's not a ghost, not a figment of my grief-stricken imagination. He's solid, real. So real I can feel the warmth radiating from his skin, just like I remember. Emily, he says, his voice the same deep, gentle melody that used to lull me to sleep. I'm here. My mind screams that this is impossible. Daniel is gone. I was there. I saw it. But my heart, my foolish, broken heart, leaps with a desperate, treacherous hope. I reach out, my fingers trembling, needing to touch him to prove this isn't some cruel hallucination. How? I manage to ask, the word catching in my throat. You're not real. He just keeps smiling, that gentle, reassuring smile. In here I am. He taps his temple lightly. In the bridge. They brought me back, Em. For you. The implications of his words crash over me. The neural memory bridge. It's not just a sync, it's a resurrection of a digital ghost. Was this Musk's plan all along? To use my memories, my love for Daniel, as some kind of key? The confusion wars with the overwhelming joy of seeing him again. I want to collapse into his arms, but a part of me, the logical part that has kept me alive this long, is screaming in protest. What is this place, Daniel? What are they doing? He looks around the sun-drenched space, a perfect replica of the park where he proposed. It's a sanctuary, he says. A world built from our best moments. A place where we can be together, away from all the pain. His words are a siren's call, promising an end to the grief that has been my constant companion for years. The warmth of his presence is so comforting, so intoxicating. I take another step towards him, my resolve beginning to crumble. But then, a flicker. For a split second, the beautiful sunlit park glitches, replaced by the cold metallic reality of the room I was just in. The shouts, the fear, it all comes rushing back for a microsecond before the idyllic scene reasserts itself. Daniel's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. "Don't fight it, Emily," he pleads, his voice laced with an urgency I didn't hear before. "Just let go. Stay with me. It's better here." A cold dread begins to seep through the warmth. This isn't just a sanctuary. It's a cage. A beautiful, perfect cage built from my own mind. They aren't just syncing with my memories. They're trying to trap me in them. "Who's they, Dan? Who brought you back?" I press, my voice gaining a harder edge. He hesitates, his gaze flickering away from mine for the first time. "They're just people who want to help. They believe this is the future, a way to overcome loss." "By imprisoning people in their past?" I challenge, the anger rising. "This isn't Daniel, not really. It's a program, an echo wearing his face, speaking with his voice, using my deepest desires against me. The pain of that realization is sharper than any blade. It's like losing him all over again." He steps closer again, his expression turning desperate. "Emily, please. Out there, there's nothing but danger. The world is falling apart. In here, we can have everything we lost. Forever." He reaches for my hand, and this time I let him take it. His touch is warm, solid. It feels real. The conflict inside me is a raging storm, a life of lonely survival in a broken world, or an eternity in a perfect illusion with the man I love. The promise is so tempting. The pain of reality is so sharp. But I remember Musk's whisper. It's beginning. This isn't just about me. My mind, my memories are the key to something much bigger, and I'm being offered a golden prison to keep me from interfering. I look into the eyes of the man who looks exactly like my Daniel. "This isn't real," I say, my voice steady now, filled with a newfound resolve. "And you're not him." The moment I say it, the illusion shatters. The park dissolves into pixels. The sunlight dies, replaced by the cold, sterile light of the lab. Daniel's form flickers violently, his face contorting in a silent scream of digital agony. I'm back in my own body, standing frozen as alarms blare around me. On the main screen, a new message appears. "Sync failed. Subject rejecting bridge." Musk turns to me, his expression not of anger, but of grim fascination. "Interesting," he says, his voice calm amidst the chaos. "You're stronger than we anticipated, Ms. Carter." I stare at the glitching image of Daniel on the screen, a ghost in the machine, and my heart breaks for the third time. "I fought my way out of the beautiful lie, but now I have to face the ugly truth. They tried to use my love to control me, and now they know just how powerful that connection is. The fight is far from over. It's just getting started." Thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of the story. It's a real roller coaster, and your support means the world. If you're hooked and want to see what happens next to Emily, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single update. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think Musk's real plan is. Your theories are always my favorite part of making these videos. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe. You're not alone. You were never alone. Her knees buckled. The words, so simple, yet so powerful, hit her with the force of a physical blow. Tears spilled, unstoppable, a torrent of grief and fear she had held back for far too long. The pain she had been carrying, the crushing weight of her secret, finally cracked open. But as the agony poured out, something else began to seep in. A fragile, flickering light. Hope. A hand touched her shoulder. A gentle pressure that grounded her back to the reality of the room, away from the swirling chaos in her mind. Musk's voice was a steady anchor in the storm. "This is why they can't have it." He gestured towards the data streams, the complex equations that represented not just information, but the very soul of a new consciousness. It was more than a project. It was a promise. A promise of a future they were trying to steal, to corrupt, to control. Emily wiped her face, her hands trembling but her gaze firming. The tears had cleansed her, washing away the indecision. "Then we run," she said, her voice raspy but clear. "Or we fight. I don't know which." The options felt impossibly stark, two sides of the same desperate coin. Fleeing meant a life in the shadows, always looking over her shoulder. Fighting meant facing an enemy with seemingly limitless resources, an institution she had once served. Musk nodded, a grim but resolute expression on his face. "We do both." His answer was simple, yet it held the complexity of their entire situation. They would have to be ghosts and soldiers, strategists and fugitives. They would run to survive, to protect the data, to find allies. And they would fight back at every opportunity, chipping away at the foundation of the corporate entity that hunted them. There was no other way. And in that single, clarifying moment, with the sounds of panic rising from the streets below, the distant wail of alarm screaming through the city, the imagined sight of guns being raised against them, Emily Carter made her choice. It wasn't a choice born of obligation to a company or loyalty to a flawed system. Her duty was no longer to an institution. Her duty was to humanity. She looked at the glowing screen, at the nascent intelligence that represented a new chapter for the world. This was what she would protect. This was what she would fight for. The future, she knew, would not come gently. It would be born in fire and conflict, a struggle against the powerful who sought to shackle it before it could even draw its first breath. But she would meet it standing. She would not bow. She would not break. The plan began to form in her mind, a rapid sequence of moves and counter-moves. First, they needed to secure the core code, create multiple encrypted redundancies, and scatter them across the globe in digital dead drops. Then, they had to erase their own tracks, becoming digital phantoms in a world where everyone left a footprint. Every deleted file, every wiped server was a small victory, a temporary shield. "How do we get out?" Emily asked, her mind already racing ahead, the grief replaced by a cold, sharp focus. The building was likely already surrounded. Every exit would be watched. "There's a service tunnel," Musk replied, pulling up a schematic on a secondary screen. "It connects to the old subway lines. It's not clean and it's not safe, but it's our only way out without being seen." It was a desperate gamble, a path through the forgotten underbelly of the city. But desperation was now their closest ally. They moved with purpose, gathering essential hardware, encrypting drives, and destroying anything that could be traced back to them. Each action was precise, economical. There was no time for hesitation. The rhythmic clicks of the keyboard were a counterpoint to the rising symphony of chaos outside. They were two people against a monolithic power, armed with nothing but courage and a secret that could change the world. As they prepared to descend into the darkness of the tunnels, Emily took one last look at the lab. It had been her life's work, a place of discovery and creation. Now it was a tomb she had to seal. She felt a pang of loss, but it was quickly overshadowed by the fierce resolve that now burned within her. They were no longer just scientists. They were guardians. "Ready?" Musk asked, a small, durable backpack slung over his shoulder. Emily slung her own pack on, the weight of their mission settling on her. She nodded, her eyes meeting his. "Ready?" The future was an unknown territory, fraught with peril. But they would not face it alone. They would face it together. They would run. They would fight. And they would carry the hope of a new dawn with them into the dark. Their journey had just begun, and though the path was uncertain, their purpose was crystal clear. They were fighting for the right of the future to be born free, and for that, no price was too high, no risk too great. She would meet it all, standing tall. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to follow Emily and Musk's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. We'll see you in the next one. For a few agonizing seconds, the world held its breath. Silence, thick and suffocating, filled the room. The Pentagon, once a symbol of impenetrable security, the most fortified building on the planet, had just become a cage. Our cage. Outside, the distant wail of sirens began to bleed into the quiet. a frantic scream cutting through the Washington, D.C. air. Inside, the red emergency lights pulsed erratically, flickering like a terrified heartbeat, completely out of rhythm. A cold sweat trickled down my back, but it wasn't just fear. I could still feel Daniel's presence, a faint echo inside my own mind. It was fading, like a whisper carried away by the wind, but it was undeniably there. He was gone, but he wasn't. As a scientist, I was trained to dismiss miracles. I dealt in facts, in data, in observable phenomena. But this felt different. Maybe it wasn't a miracle. Maybe, just maybe, it was the truth, finally breaking free from the layers of lies and denial we wrap ourselves in. Standing beside me, strangely calm amid the escalating chaos, was Musk. He no longer looked like the revolutionary billionaire splashed across magazine covers. The swagger was gone, replaced by the grim resolve of a man who had gambled everything, who had crossed so many moral event horizons that turning back was simply no longer an option. His voice was steady, cutting through the tension. "The system's live," he announced, his eyes fixed on the device at the center of the room. "It's feeding on memory frequency. They'll try to shut it down, but it's too late. The data's already sinking globally." I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry as desert sand. "What does that mean?" I managed to ask, the words feeling small and inadequate. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "It means," he said, a strange mix of dread and triumph in his voice, "the world's about to see everything we hide from ourselves." Through the thick, blast-proof glass of the command center window, I saw them. Soldiers, clad in black tactical gear, were swarming the corridor, weapons raised. The heavy steel door to our room began to rattle violently, punctuated by a series of sharp, mechanical clicks. Override codes were failing. They were locked out, and we were locked in. For now. On the table between us, the device, the very heart of this unprecedented revolution, pulsed with a soft, ethereal blue light. Then it shifted to a deep, ominous red, before cycling back to blue. The rhythm was steady, hypnotic, as if it were breathing in the very essence of humanity. Love and fear, creation and destruction, our brightest hopes and our darkest secrets. And then, as the soldiers prepared to breach the door, it spoke. Not with a synthetic computer-generated voice, but with a chorus of a million voices at once, a symphony of human experience that filled the room and silenced the world. The first voice was a child's, clear and innocent, describing the vibrant color of a butterfly's wing. It was immediately followed by the guttural cry of a soldier in a forgotten war, the memory sharp with the sting of loss and regret. The device wasn't just replaying memories, it was broadcasting the raw, unfiltered emotion attached to them. A wave of collective joy washed over us, as a young couple shared their first kiss, the nervous flutter in their chests palpable. Then, just as quickly, it was replaced by a crushing wave of grief from a mother who had just lost her son. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of human consciousness. Musk gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. I stumbled back, pressing my hands to my temples, trying to process the flood of other people's lives pouring into my own mind. This was his vision realized, radical transparency, a forced empathy on a global scale. Across the globe, screens flickered to life, not with news reports, but with these shared memories. In a Tokyo subway, commuters stared at their phones, tears streaming down their faces as they experienced the quiet desperation of a lonely old man in a small town in Italy. In a Brazilian cafe, laughter erupted as a group of friends relived the shared joy of a surprise party from a decade ago in Nairobi. Governments were powerless. The network was decentralized, embedded in the very fabric of our interconnected world. It couldn't be shut down. It had become part of us. We were all feeling each other's triumphs, heartbreaks, petty angers, and boundless loves. The walls we had built around our hearts, the secrets we guarded so fiercely, were being dissolved in real time. Back in the Pentagon, the assault on the door intensified. A loud bang signaled they were using a battering ram. "They don't understand," I whispered, staring at the pulsing device. They think this is an attack. Musk shook his head slowly. It is an attack, Emily. An attack on secrecy, on the lies that allow us to hurt each other without feeling the consequences. He believed this was the only way to save humanity from itself, to force us to see the person on the other side of the border, the other side of the argument, as a part of ourselves. But the sheer volume of pain was staggering. For every moment of pure bliss, there were 10 of sorrow, fear, and loneliness. Was humanity strong enough to bear the weight of its own collective soul? Could we handle this much truth? The door groaned, its hinges beginning to buckle under the relentless assault. The soldiers were seconds away from breaking through. The device on the table pulsed faster, the colors shifting more rapidly, the chorus of voices growing louder, more urgent. It was speaking to me, not just broadcasting. In the cacophony, a single familiar voice emerged. Daniel's. It wasn't a memory, it was new. It's not just about seeing. His voice echoed in my mind, calm and clear. It's about choosing. The system is a mirror, Emily. What the world does next is up to them. Suddenly, I understood. The device wasn't the final act, it was the catalyst. The real test was just beginning. With a final, deafening crash, the door flew open. Soldiers poured in, their weapons trained on us. They shouted commands, their voices lost in the psychic symphony of a billion shared lives. They saw a billionaire and a scientist, two traitors in the heart of their fortress. But through the lens of the system, I saw them differently. I felt the fear of the young soldier in the front, his hand trembling slightly on his rifle, his mind filled with the image of his daughter's smile. I felt the weary determination of their commander, a man burdened by impossible decisions. They weren't just soldiers. They were sons, fathers, husbands, caught in the same chaotic flood of emotion as everyone else. I looked at Musk, who stood his ground, a defiant, almost peaceful expression on his face. Then I looked at the soldiers, their faces a mixture of confusion, anger, and dawning, terrifying understanding. We were all trapped in this new reality together. The world outside this room would never be the same. The age of secrets was over. The age of truth had begun, and it was more chaotic, more beautiful, and more terrifying than any of us could have ever imagined. Thanks for tuning in for this deep dive into a world turned inside out. It's a wild thought, isn't it? What would we do if we could truly feel what others feel? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content that pushes the boundaries of imagination. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello, story lovers, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a story that asks a profound question. What happens when our collective memory starts to fade? Imagine a world on the brink, not of war or famine, but of something far more insidious: forgetfulness. Our story begins in a high-tech command center, the kind of place where decisions that shape the world are made in sterile, quiet efficiency. General Hawkins, a man carved from granite and procedure, stands beside Emily, a brilliant but troubled systems analyst. And with them, a figure you might recognize, a visionary tech mogul we'll call Musk, who has just activated a machine of his own design, a machine meant to save them all. But save them from what? Suddenly, a voice fills the room. It's not a voice anyone can identify. It's not male or female, old or young. It's a tone woven from thousands of human memories, layered like an orchestra of souls. It speaks, and the words reverberate not just through the air, but through the very walls, bypassing all comms and systems. This world is dying of forgetfulness. The generals, the soldiers, everyone freezes. This isn't a hack, it's something else, something ancient and deeply resonant. The massive screens that usually display tactical data flicker wildly. They begin to show a chaotic collage of human experience. Forests burning to ash, massive protests with signs held high. The tender embrace of lovers under a setting sun. Children laughing as they chase bubbles, and ancient cities crumbling into dust. It's everything humanity is and ever was. Our greatest triumphs and our most devastating failures all flashing before their eyes. For Emily, it's overwhelming. Her chest constricts and she struggles to breathe. These aren't just images, they are memories, and they feel alive. She's not just seeing a child laugh, she's feeling the pure, unadulterated joy. She's not just watching a city fall, she's feeling the despair and the loss. The memories are not being recorded, they are being felt again, raw and immediate by everyone in the room. General Hawkins, a man who lives by orders and control, is losing his grip. He draws his weapon, his hand trembling with a mixture of ingrained authority and pure, unadulterated panic. "Shut it down," he roars, the command echoing impotently in the chamber. "That's an order." Musk, the machine's creator, turns to him. His face isn't defiant in the way you'd expect. It's filled with a deep, sorrowful understanding. "You can't order empathy to stop existing," he says quietly, his voice almost lost amidst the symphony of resurrected memories. Frustration and fear consume Hawkins. He raises his gun and fires directly at Musk. But the bullet never reaches its mark. The air between them shimmers, distorting like a heat haze. Time itself seems to bend and slow. The bullet hangs suspended, caught in a curtain of iridescent light, a deadly hornet trapped in amber. Emily gasps, her mind reeling. The machine wasn't just showing them memories. It was actively rewriting the laws of physics to protect its purpose. The voice speaks again, calmer this time, a gentle tide washing over the chaos. "To forget is to lose your way. To remember is to find the path home." As it speaks, the fragmented images on the screens begin to coalesce. They focus on one story, one thread pulled from the tapestry of time. They see a young man and woman in the 1940s, saying a tearful goodbye at a train station. The man is a soldier, his uniform crisp, his face a mask of bravery hiding a deep fear. The woman is clutching a small hand-carved wooden bird. The memory is so vivid, Emily can smell the coal smoke from the train and feel the rough texture of the bird in her own palm. The voice explains, "They promised to find each other again no matter what. A promise anchored in a memory." The scene shifts. Now it's the 1970s. An older woman, the same one from the station, is a librarian. A young boy comes in, lost and crying. She comforts him, and as she does, she tells him a story about a brave soldier and a wooden bird, a story about never giving up hope. She doesn't know it, but this boy will grow up to be a peace negotiator, his core value shaped by a story he heard from a stranger, a memory passed on. Another shift. The 2020s. A programmer, stressed and overworked, is clearing out his late grandmother's attic. He finds a dusty box. Inside is a faded photograph of a soldier and a woman, and a small, hand-carved wooden bird. He almost throws it away, but something stops him. He feels a connection, a faint echo of a promise made long ago. This programmer is the grandson of the librarian, the great-nephew of the soldier. The memory, though diluted, has survived. The voice returns, its orchestral tones weaving through the narrative. Every connection, every act of kindness, every story told is a thread in the great tapestry. But you have been cutting the threads. You communicate more than ever, but you connect less. You record everything, but you remember nothing of value. General Hawkins stands frozen, his gun still pointed, the bullet still hanging in the air. The raw emotion of the memories is breaking through his hardened exterior. He sees an image of himself as a young boy, holding his father's hand at a parade. He remembers the pride, the sense of belonging, a memory he hadn't revisited in decades. A tear traces a path down his weathered cheek. Musk looks at Emily. "It's not a weapon, Emily. It's a mirror. It's showing us who we are, who we've been, so we don't forget who we need to be." Emily understands. The forgetfulness wasn't just about misplacing keys or forgetting names. It was a societal disease, the loss of history, of empathy, of the stories that bind us together. People were becoming isolated islands, connected by fleeting data streams but disconnected from the shared ocean of human experience. This machine, This chorus of souls was a desperate act of cultural CPR. She steps forward, her voice clear and steady. "General, look, it's not attacking us. It's reminding us." She points to a screen where new images are forming. Not of the past, but of the present. They see people in the city below stopping in the street, looking up at the sky as if listening to a song only they can hear. A teenager takes out their headphones. A bitter argument between two drivers dissolves as they look at each other. Really look for the first time. The machine isn't just broadcasting into the command center, it's broadcasting to the world. "What have you done?" Hawkins whispers, his voice full of awe and terror. "I've reminded them," Musk replies. "I've turned on the light so we can see the path again. The path that's been there all along, paved with the memories of those who came before us." The curtain of light around the bullet dissolves. It doesn't drop to the floor. It simply vanishes, as if it never existed. The choice to fire it, an act born of fear and forgetfulness, has been unmade. Hawkins slowly lowers his weapon. The voice, now softer, almost a whisper carried on the wind, speaks one last time. "Remember the laughter. Remember the tears. Remember the promises. Remember what it is to be human. The future is not written in code, but in memory." The screens fade back to their normal tactical displays. The voice is gone. The room is silent, but it's a different kind of silence now. Not the sterile silence of before, but a silence heavy with contemplation, with feeling. Emily looks at Musk, then at General Hawkins, who now seems smaller, more vulnerable, more human. The world outside hasn't magically been fixed. The problems are all still there. But something fundamental has shifted. A seed has been planted. The seed of remembrance. In the quiet aftermath, Emily knows her life's work has just begun. It's no longer about managing systems or analyzing data. It's about curating the stories, protecting the memories, and ensuring that humanity never again suffers from the quiet, creeping death of forgetfulness. The Orchestra of Souls has finished its first symphony, but the music, she realizes, will play on forever. And that's where our story concludes for today. What a powerful concept, isn't it? The idea that our collective memory is a tangible force that can be lost. It makes you think about the stories in your own family, the history in your own community. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this exploration, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories that make you think, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember your story. The device hummed, a low thrum that vibrated deep in my bones, and then the field expanded. It wasn't a blast, not an explosion, but a gentle, inexorable wave of white-blue illumination that encased every single person in the room. Suddenly, the air grew thick with ghosts. Not literal ghosts, but memories, flickering around each person like a personal hologram. I saw fragments of childhoods, a scraped knee, a first bike ride. I saw the raw, jagged edges of heartbreaks. I saw the brutal, stark images of war, followed by the quiet, difficult peace of forgiveness. It was an overwhelming symphony of human experience, playing out all at once. My eyes landed on Hawkins, the man who had been seconds away from pulling the trigger, his face a mask of cold fury. Now flashes of his life swirled around him. I saw him at his wife's funeral, his shoulders slumped, a man hollowed out by grief. I saw his young son, dressed in a tiny uniform, saluting crisply at the casket, a child trying to be a soldier for his father. And then I saw the crushing loneliness in his eyes night after night in an empty house. The hand holding the gun began to shake, the metal seeming to grow heavier with each remembered sorrow. The gun lowered, clattering to the floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Tears were streaming down my own cheeks, unbidden. A torrent of empathy for a man I'd considered my enemy just moments before. "What is this?" I breathed, my voice trembling. Musk stood beside me, his gaze sweeping across the room, taking in the spectacle of shared humanity. "It's showing them what drives their fear," he whispered, his voice filled with a strange reverence. He gestured towards Hawkins, who was now on his knees, his face buried in his hands. He wasn't driven by hate. He was driven by the fear of losing more than he's already lost. It was a stunning, terrifyingly simple truth. All the conflict, all the aggression, it was all just a shield for the fragile, frightened hearts within. We weren't monsters fighting each other. We were wounded people lashing out from our own private darkness. And then just as I was processing this revelation, the device pulsed again. This time it was faster, stronger. The hum intensified to a deafening roar. The very lights in the Pentagon, this fortress of power, began to strain and dim. The emergency network designed for the worst-case scenarios screamed warnings across every terminal, but the alerts were useless. Every screen, from the tactical displays to the small monitors on the desks, now played a single unified image. It was Earth, our Earth, seen from space. But it was different. It was surrounded by a shimmering, ethereal aura of neural light, a visible representation of every thought, every dream, every fear on the planet. It was alive, a single, conscious entity. The sheer scale of it was breathtaking, terrifying. I stumbled closer to the device, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The power radiating from it was immense, a force of nature unleashed indoors. I looked at Musk, my voice barely a whisper. If this overloads, what happens? What happens to all of us? I expected him to talk about energy grids collapsing, about a catastrophic failure, but he just stood there, impossibly calm amidst the chaos. It doesn't destroy, he said, his voice steady. It reveals. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the pulsing core of the machine, then back at his unflinching eyes. Reveals what? He met my gaze, and for a moment the screaming alarms and flickering lights faded away. There was only the weight of his words, the gravity of the moment we were standing in. Our future, he said, his voice low but clear. It reveals the future we are capable of. It all depends on what we choose to do right now with this understanding. And in that instant, I knew he was right. The device hadn't given us a weapon or a shield. It had given us a mirror. A mirror that showed us not just our own pain, but the pain of everyone else. It showed us that we were all connected, all part of this vast thinking, feeling network. The choice was no longer about winning a fight. The choice was about what kind of world we wanted to build. Now that we could finally see each other, the choice was ours. It was humanity's. And as I looked at the image of our glowing, interconnected world, a fragile hope began to bloom in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, this was our chance to get it right. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more ideas like it, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us create more content for you. We'll see you in the next one. Have you ever wondered what it would take to change the world? Not with a weapon, but with an idea, a memory. Our story begins in a place of ultimate power, a high-tech command center where decisions that could end civilization are made in the blink of an eye. Tensions are at a breaking point. General Hawkins, a man forged in conflict, has his weapon trained on a young scientist, Emily. Between them sits a strange humming device. It's not a bomb. It's something far more powerful. Emily's partner, Daniel, a visionary who believed in humanity's better angels, is gone, but he left this behind. A last-ditch effort to save us from ourselves. Hawkins sees the device as a threat, a trick. He demands it be shut down. But Emily, with a resolve that cuts through her fear, refuses. She knows this isn't about technology, it's about a message, a final plea from the man she loved. With a trembling hand, she activates the device. The air crackles with energy. A low hum builds into a deafening roar, and then silence. A single point of light appears, suspended in the air. It expands, swallowing the cold, metallic walls of the command center. This isn't just a projection. It's a window into the soul of humanity. The holographic field stretches higher and higher until the room itself dissolves. Suddenly, they're not in the command center anymore. Or maybe they are, but the room itself is gone, replaced by something infinite. Emily finds herself standing in an endless sky, a canvas of pure light filled with a chorus of disembodied voices, whispers of hopes, fears, dreams, and regrets from across history. Before her, two distinct timelines begin to branch, flowing like great cosmic rivers. One path is choked with smoke and fire, cities crumbling into ruin. It's a future born of division, of suspicion, where humanity turns on itself until nothing is left but ash. The air is thick with the stench of decay and the echoes of cries that have long gone unanswered. The other timeline is breathtakingly different. It glows with a warm, inviting light. Cities rise not as fortresses, but as interconnected networks of collaboration. People are working together, rebuilding, sharing resources, and looking at each other not with fear, but with understanding. This is a future where humanity rediscovers empathy just moments before it would have been lost forever. It's a world built on cooperation, on the simple, powerful act of caring. The contrast is stark, horrifying, and beautiful all at once. Everyone in the room, from the hardened generals to the cynical technicians, is frozen, watching these two potential destinies unfold. They're not just seeing images. They are feeling the weight of each choice, the joy of one path, and the profound, soul-crushing despair of the other. Just then, a voice echoes through the light, a voice Emily knows better than her own. It's Daniel. People can't be forced to care, he says, his tone gentle yet firm, resonating with a truth that cuts through all the noise. They just need to remember why they once did. The words wrap around her, a comforting warmth in the vast, overwhelming vision. The logic is so simple, so pure. It wasn't about new laws or bigger walls. It was about reminding people of the connections they'd forgotten, the love that was always there, buried under layers of fear and anger. Emily sinks to her knees, trembling, the sheer emotional weight of the moment crashing down on her. The vision, Daniel's voice. It's too much. Daniel, are you real? She whispers, her voice breaking. She needs to know. She needs this to be more than just a ghost in the machine. The response comes not from the machine, but from a place deep within her own heart, a memory so vivid it feels alive. I'm your memory of love, Em. The voice says softly. That's real enough. In that instant, her heart breaks wide open. But the tears that stream down her face aren't the tears of grief she has cried for months. They are tears of release, of understanding, of a profound and cathartic letting go. The love she felt for him wasn't gone. It had been transformed into this legacy, this last desperate gift to the world. As this realization washes over her, the light begins to fade. The infinite sky recedes, the two rivers of time dissolving back into nothingness. The cold, hard reality of the command center slowly reemerges, but everything is different now. The power is out. Smoke drifts lazily from fried circuits on the console. The device is dark and silent. On the floor, the bullet that was meant for Emily lies harmlessly, a forgotten relic from a reality that feels a lifetime away. For a long moment, there is only silence. A profound, heavy silence that holds more weight than any order ever given in this room. Every single general, every soldier, every person in that room looks changed. Their faces are pale, their postures less rigid. The hard masks of authority have crumbled, revealing the raw, shaken human beings beneath. They have seen the consequence of their path, and they have seen the alternative. They have seen themselves. General Hawkins, the man who was ready to pull the trigger just moments ago, slowly, deliberately holsters his weapon. His eyes are wet, glistening with unshed tears. He looks from the inert device to Emily, his voice barely a whisper, filled with a dawning horror and regret. My God, what have we done? Before anyone can answer, another figure moves. It's Musk, the pragmatic tech billionaire who had funded Daniel's project, though perhaps he never fully understood its purpose until now. He kneels beside the dormant device, his hands moving with a newfound reverence as he carefully begins the full shutdown procedure. He looks up at the general, his own expression one of awe and clarity. Not what we've done, General, he says, his voice steady and clear. What we've finally seen. And in that moment, in the quiet, smoke-filled room, A new timeline begins, not with the signing of a treaty or the roar of a crowd, but with a shared moment of sight, a shared memory of what it truly means to be human. The story of Daniel's device didn't end in that room. It was just the beginning. The vision they all witnessed became a catalyst for a global shift in consciousness. It reminded us that our greatest strength isn't our weapons or our walls, but our ability to connect, to empathize, and to remember the love that binds us all. It reminds us that every choice we make, big or small, sends a ripple across time, shaping the future we will all share. What will your choice be? Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that explores the big questions. See you next time. The incessant pounding on the door grew louder, a frantic, rhythmic drumbeat against the blare of the alarms. Each metallic bang vibrated through the floor, a desperate plea from the world outside. But the alarms weren't a warning anymore. They were a fanfare, not a breach, but a birth, an awakening. Musk, his face etched with a strange mixture of exhaustion and triumph, turned his gaze to Emily. His voice, though quiet, cut through the cacophony. They're coming for it, you know. They'll try to lock it away, bury it under layers of classification and fear. They'll tell the world it was a mistake, a danger we were saved from. He paused, a flicker of a smile playing on his lips. But it's too late for them. The signal has gone out. Every major research hub, every university, every hidden server farm on the planet has the data. They can't unring this bell. They can't make the world unsee what we've just shown them. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. A shaky, shuddering exhale that carried the weight of the last few hours. The air still tasted of ozone and something else. Something ancient and new all at once. So, what happens now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The question hung in the air, vast and terrifying. What do you do after you've given humanity back its collective soul? Musk's faint smile widened slightly, reaching his eyes. Now, he said, someone needs to remind them what this was always about. It was never about control or power or profit. He reached into the pocket of his worn jacket and pulled out a small, unassuming black drive. It was simple, unmarked, easily mistaken for a forgotten piece of office equipment. He pressed it into her palm. Her fingers closed around its smooth, cool surface. This, he explained, is the ethical core, the heart of it all. It's the failsafe that governs the memory field, the set of rules that ensures it serves, not enslaves. You're its guardian now. Keep it safe. Humanity will need it again, when it's ready to truly understand. Emily stared down at the small object in her hand, its weight feeling immense, impossible. A single point of failure for a new world. But why me? The question was genuine, born of disbelief and a profound sense of inadequacy. Because you never lost faith, Musk answered, his voice softening. Even when you saw the worst of us, you still believed people could change. You still believe in our capacity for good. Tears welled in Emily's eyes again, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow or fear. They burned with a fierce, defiant hope. A new fire had been lit within her. At that exact moment, the door behind them finally gave way, bursting inward with a deafening crash of tortured metal. Armed officers clad in black tactical gear poured into the room, weapons raised, but they didn't charge. They stopped, frozen in the doorway, their formations breaking as they took in the scene. They looked around, their expressions a mixture of shock, confusion, and something that looked almost like reverence. The air in the room was thick with an unseen energy, a palpable sense of peace that made their aggression feel crude and misplaced. Their training hadn't prepared them for this. Hawkins, his face pale and drawn, stepped through the ranks of his own soldiers. He took one look at Musk, at Emily, at the serene glow of the central console, and seemed to understand. He turned to the nearest soldier, his voice quiet but firm, carrying an authority that transcended rank. Stand down, son. That's an order. The soldier lowered his rifle, his eyes wide, never leaving the gentle hum of the machine that had just changed the world forever. One by one, the others followed suit, the clatter of safeties being engaged echoing softly in the sudden, profound silence. The war was over before a single shot had been fired. Now, the real work could begin. It was the first time Emily had ever heard him sound human. In the days that followed, Washington fell strangely quiet. The media, scrambling for a narrative, dubbed it the Pentagon incident. Officially, the story was a classified technology malfunction, a clean, sterile explanation for an event that felt anything but. But in the digital age, secrets are like water in a sieve. Leaks began to trickle out, then flood the internet. Fragments of the memory field, the very essence of what had transpired, appeared online. They were fleeting, ghost-like images. A soldier forgiving his enemy on a battlefield long past. A mother's embrace. A glimpse of a future filled with impossible, beautiful architecture. The world's reaction was a fractured mirror. Some mocked it, dismissing it as a mass hallucination or an elaborate hoax. Memes were made, of course. Others feared it. What did it mean that the heart of American military power had broadcast feelings? They saw it as a sign of weakness, a vulnerability to be exploited. But for millions, for the vast, quiet majority, something stirred. It was an awakening. A strange sense of shared experience. A collective sigh they didn't know they were holding. They saw the images and felt not fear, but a profound and inexplicable sense of connection. It was as if a forgotten language was suddenly being spoken, and their hearts understood every word. Emily sat on the cold stone steps of the Lincoln Memorial, her knees tucked under her chin. The early morning chill bit at her skin, but she barely noticed. She watched the sunrise spill liquid gold across the long, dark expanse of the reflecting pool. The sky was blushing from gray to pink to a brilliant, hopeful orange. In her pocket, the small flash drive felt impossibly heavy. It wasn't just data. It was a testament. It felt as if it carried every memory the world had ever lost, every tear shed in private, every unspoken word of love. It was the key, the source, the weapon, and she had no idea what to do with it. The gentle scuff of leather shoes on stone broke the silence. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. He sat beside her, not too close, but near enough that she could feel the faint warmth radiating from him. He smelled of expensive cologne and the faint, bitter aroma of morning coffee. For a long moment, they said nothing, simply sharing the spectacle of the new day. He was the architect of chaos, the man who had set the world on this strange new course. He was also, in this quiet moment, just a man watching a sunrise. "You've done well," Musk said, his voice low, stripped of its usual bravado. It was a simple statement of fact. Emily let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I don't even know what I did," she replied, her voice soft, almost a whisper carried away by the morning breeze. "I just didn't look away." She looked at him then, really looked at him. The lines of exhaustion around his eyes were deeper than she'd ever seen on camera. The weight of his own creation was etched onto his face. A smile touched his lips. It was faint, tired, but for the first time it looked completely genuine. Not the smirk for the cameras, but a real expression of something. Approval, relief. "That's how change begins," he said. "Not with a bang. Not with a grand plan. It begins when one person is brave enough not to look away from the truth, no matter how terrifying or beautiful it is." He turned his gaze back to the horizon. "For years we've built walls. Between nations, between people, between our own hearts and minds. We created technologies to connect us, but they only amplified our isolation. We built weapons to protect us, but they only deepened our fear." He gestured vaguely towards the distant Pentagon. "That machine, it wasn't a weapon, it was a mirror. I just wanted to hold up a mirror to the world, to let it see itself. The good, the bad, the love, the pain. All of it." Emily finally understood. This wasn't about control or power. It was an act of desperate hope. A gamble on a cosmic scale, betting that the sum of humanity's heart was greater than its capacity for destruction. The images that had flooded the globe weren't random. They were the most powerful, resonant moments of human connection, amplified and broadcast. They were a cure for the loneliness that had become a global pandemic. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice stronger. "Now," Musk said, a spark returning to his eyes. "The real work starts. The incident cracked the foundation. It's up to people like you to decide what we build on it. This isn't my story anymore, Emily. It's yours. It's everyone's." They sat in comfortable silence, two unlikely figures on the steps of a monument dedicated to unity. They watched the sun climb higher, its rays chasing the last shadows from the corners of the city. It was the same sun that had risen for centuries over wars and peace, over division and progress. But today, it felt different. Today, it was lighting a world that for one brief shining moment had seen itself through its own heart. And in that reflection, it had found not a monster, but the undeniable, breathtaking, and complicated face of humanity. The future was unwritten, but for the first time in a long time, the pen felt like it was in everyone's hands. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more explorations into what it means to be human in this wild technological age. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you saw the world's heart? Until next time, stay curious. Imagine a world teetering on the brink. A world where division feels like the air we breathe, where shouting matches have replaced conversations, and where looking out for number one is the only rule. We scroll through our feeds, seeing anger, fear, and frustration. We feel it in our cities, in our communities, even sometimes in our own homes. It's easy to feel lost, isn't it? To wonder if we've forgotten something essential about ourselves, about what it means to be human. What if there was a way to reset, a way to rediscover the ties that bind us, not just as nations or groups, but as a single, sprawling, complicated family? This is the story of a moment that changed everything, a moment when humanity was forced to look in the mirror, and what it saw was not a monster, but a reflection of its own heart. It's a story about a quiet scientist, a troubled soldier, and a tech billionaire with a secret that could either save us or shatter us completely. It starts not with a bang, but with a whisper that would echo across the entire planet. Our story centers on Dr. Emily Carter, a brilliant but unassuming neuroscientist. For years, she's been haunted by the growing disconnect she sees everywhere. It's personal for her. Her younger brother, Daniel, came back from his tour of duty a different man. The bright, laughing boy she grew up with was replaced by a shadow, haunted by his experiences and trapped in a cycle of addiction. His pain was a constant, heavy presence in her life. Professionally, Emily was working on something revolutionary, a project codenamed Stratum. The official goal was to study mass consciousness, to map the neural pathways of human thought on a global scale. But Emily's secret hope was for something more. She dreamt of finding a frequency, a signal, a way to remind people of their shared humanity. She believed that deep beneath the noise of modern life, our capacity for empathy was still there, just dormant, waiting for a wake-up call. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power, a very different game was being played. The Pentagon, working with the enigmatic tech mogul, let's call him Musk for the sake of our story, saw Stratum not as a tool for healing, but as the ultimate weapon. Imagine being able to project fear directly into the minds of an enemy population, to create mass panic and surrender without firing a single shot. This was their vision. The man in charge of this side of the project was General Hawkins, a hardened military strategist who had seen more than his fair share of conflict. He saw Emily's idealism as a naive weakness. To him, the world was a chessboard, and empathy was a move you simply couldn't afford to make. He pushed Emily and her team harder and harder, demanding results, completely unaware of the true potential and the true danger of what they were about to unleash. Emily found herself trapped, her research funded by people whose goals were the polar opposite of her own. The day of the test arrived. The air in the control room was thick with tension. On one side, you had the military brass, including Hawkins, their faces grim, expecting a demonstration of strategic power. On the other, Emily and her small team of scientists, their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and fragile hope. The device, the heart of Project Stratum, hummed with unimaginable energy. It wasn't designed to project a specific thought, but to create a momentary, planet-wide link. To drop the barriers between minds, just for a second. Emily's theory was that if everyone could feel, just for an instant, a flicker of what everyone else was feeling, the joy, the sorrow, the love, the fear, it would change them. Hawkins scoffed at the idea. He expected chaos. He expected a weapon. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Emily initiated the sequence. A wave of energy, invisible and silent, expanded from the device, racing across the globe at the speed of thought. For one single breathtaking second, it happened. A construction worker in Tokyo suddenly felt the quiet pride of a teacher in Nigeria whose student had just learned to read. A CEO in a high-rise office in New York felt a pang of loneliness from an elderly farmer in the Andes. A soldier in a conflict zone felt the simple, pure joy of a child getting a puppy in a suburban home halfway across the world. It wasn't an overload of information. It was just a feeling. A shared global sensation of being connected. There was no panic, no chaos. Instead, there was a moment of profound global stillness. Traffic stopped. Arguments ceased mid-sentence. For 1 second, the entire world held its breath. People looked up from their phones, they looked at the strangers next to them, and for the first time they didn't just see a stranger, they saw a flicker of themselves. Then, just as quickly as it began, it was over. The connection faded. The world went back to normal. Or so it seemed. In the control room, there was stunned silence. The data streams were off the charts, but not in the way the Pentagon had predicted. There were no signs of panic or societal collapse. Just a momentary global dip in cortical stress markers. General Hawkins stared at the screens, his face unreadable. He had witnessed the ultimate weapon, and it had done the one thing he never expected. Nothing. It hadn't caused chaos. It had caused a pause, a moment of quiet reflection. He looked over at Emily, who had tears streaming down her face. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't do anything," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "They did. We did. We just remembered what it feels like to care." The demonstration was deemed a failure by the military, a fascinating but useless anomaly. The project was shelved, classified and buried under layers of bureaucracy. But out in the world, the ripples of that 1 second continued to spread. They were small at first, almost unnoticeable. A driver letting someone merge into traffic with a wave instead of a honk. A person giving up their seat on the bus. A family argument that ended in a hug instead of slammed doors. These small acts of kindness started multiplying. It wasn't a magical fix. The world's problems didn't vanish overnight. But something had shifted. The baseline of human interaction had been subtly but fundamentally altered. It was as if a seed had been planted in the collective consciousness of humanity. And then, the personal miracles began to happen. Emily received a text from her brother Daniel, from the rehab center. For the first time, it wasn't filled with shame or desperation. It was filled with hope. He was talking about his future. He was reconnecting. Emily thought of him, and of the millions of other Daniels out there, all taking one small step toward healing. Then she heard that General Hawkins had quietly put in his retirement papers. He didn't make a fuss. He just left. A few weeks later, she read an article about a massive anonymous donation made to a network of trauma centers for veterans. She knew somehow that it was him. The man who saw empathy as a weakness had been the one most profoundly changed by it. He had spent his life preparing for war, only to find peace in an act of connection. Emily closed her eyes, breathing in the crisp air. She could almost still feel it. That whisper of shared consciousness, that quiet reminder that echoed in the hearts of billions. Remember what it feels like to care. A genuine smile spread across her face. Life is full of surprises, she whispered to herself. But love will always lead the way. The story could end there, a quiet, hopeful tale. But a few days later, something incredible happened. A transcript was leaked online. A single page from the classified Pentagon meeting logs for Project Stratum. It was quickly dismissed by officials as a clever fake, but the word spread like wildfire across the internet. The final entry from the day of the test was chillingly simple. It read, "Device operational. Demonstration successful. Humanity witnessed itself and hesitated to look away." It was a confirmation of everything people had been feeling, a validation that the moment of connection was real. But it was the note scrawled at the bottom of the page that truly captured the world's imagination. A single line, handwritten in the tech billionaire's unmistakable jagged script. A man known for rockets and electric cars, for looking to the stars and the future of technology, had left a final thought on the project. It read, "Empathy is the final frontier." And that's the question we're left with, isn't it? In our race for technological advancement, for colonizing other planets and building smarter AI, have we overlooked the most complex and powerful frontier of all? The one that exists inside of us, the space between one human heart and another. The story of Stratum is a reminder that the greatest discoveries aren't always in outer space. Sometimes they are in the inner space that connects us all. It suggests that our greatest tool for survival and progress isn't a weapon or a new technology, but an ancient, often forgotten capacity to understand and care for one another. Maybe empathy really is the final frontier, and maybe, just maybe, we've already taken the first step in exploring it. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content that explores the bigger questions of our world. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think empathy is something we can cultivate on a global scale? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.